Welcome back to Epic English Stories, where we transform lives through the power of language and motivation. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most crucial skills that separates successful people from those who struggle: the art of controlling your anger. This isn't just about managing emotions. It's about reclaiming your power, transforming your relationships, and creating the life you truly deserve. The hidden cost of uncontrolled anger. Picture this. You're driving home after a long day, and someone cuts you off in traffic. Your heart races, your hands clench the steering wheel, and before you know it, you're shouting at a stranger who can't even hear you. You arrive home carrying that anger like a poison in your bloodstream, and suddenly your family becomes the target of frustration that has nothing to do with them. This scenario plays out millions of times every day across America, and it's destroying lives, relationships, and dreams. Anger isn't just an emotion. It's a thief that steals your peace, your clarity, and your potential for greatness. When we allow anger to control us, we become prisoners in our own minds, reactive rather than responsive, weak rather than strong. The truth is that anger has become an epidemic in our society. We see it in road rage incidents, in broken families, in workplaces filled with tension, and in the mirror when we look at ourselves after another outburst we regret. But here's what most people don't understand. Anger isn't the real problem. It's a symptom of something much deeper. And once you understand this truth, you'll have the key to transforming not just your emotional responses, but your entire life. Think about the most successful people you know, the leaders, the innovators, the ones who seem to navigate life's challenges with grace and wisdom. What do they have in common? They've mastered the art of emotional regulation. They've learned that true strength isn't measured by how loudly you can shout or how forcefully you can react, but by how calmly you can respond when everything around you is falling apart. Chapter 1. The Anatomy of Anger. Understanding your inner storm. Before we can master our anger, we must first understand it completely. Anger is like an iceberg. What you see on the surface is only a small fraction of what's really happening beneath. Most people try to control their anger by suppressing the visible symptoms, but that's like trying to stop a volcano by putting a lid on it. The pressure builds until it explodes with even greater force. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. There is a successful businessman named Michael who seemed to have everything: a thriving company, a beautiful family, and respect in his community. But behind closed doors, Michael was a ticking time bomb. Every small frustration would send him into a rage that lasted for hours. His wife walked on eggshells, his children feared him, and his employees dreaded meetings with him. One day, Michael's 8-year-old daughter looked at him with tears in her eyes and asked, "Daddy, why are you always so angry?" That question hit him like a lightning bolt. He realized that his anger wasn't about the situations that triggered it. It was about the fear, disappointment, and hurt he'd been carrying for years without addressing. This is the first crucial insight. Anger is rarely about the present moment. It's usually about unresolved pain from the past, fear about the future, or feelings of powerlessness in the present. When someone criticizes your work, the anger you feel might not be about their words. It might be about the voice of a critical parent from your childhood, or the fear that you're not good enough, or the frustration of feeling unrecognized for your efforts. To truly understand your anger, you need to become a detective of your own emotions. Start paying attention to your anger patterns. What situations consistently trigger you? Is it when you feel disrespected? When you feel rushed? When you feel like your voice isn't being heard? Notice that your triggers often reveal your deepest needs and fears. Keep an anger journal for 1 week. Every time you feel angry, write down what happened, what you were thinking, what you were feeling underneath the anger, and what need wasn't being met. You'll start to see patterns that will shock you with their clarity. Maybe you realize that your anger always spikes when you feel powerless, or when you feel like people aren't taking you seriously, or when you're already stressed and something small becomes the final straw. Here's another powerful insight. Anger is often a secondary emotion. Primary emotions are things like hurt, fear, sadness, or disappointment. But these emotions can feel vulnerable and weak, so our mind quickly converts them into anger, because anger feels more powerful. It's like emotional armor that protects us from feeling the more painful emotions underneath. For example, when your teenager comes home 2 hours past curfew, your immediate reaction might be explosive anger. But if you dig deeper, you might find that the primary emotions are fear for their safety, hurt that they broke your trust, and anxiety about your ability to protect them. The anger is just the mask that covers these more vulnerable feelings. Understanding this distinction is revolutionary because it allows you to address the real issue rather than just the symptom. When you can say, "I'm feeling scared and hurt," instead of just expressing anger, you open the door to real communication and resolution. Chapter 2. The Power of the Sacred Pause. The difference between a master and a slave of emotion lies in a single moment. The space between stimulus and response. In that precious pause lives your power to choose, your freedom to respond rather than react, and your ability to create the life you want rather than being swept away by emotional storms. Most people live their entire lives without ever discovering this space. They're like pinball machines, bouncing from one emotional reaction to another, never realizing that they have the power to step back and choose their response. But once you discover the pause, everything changes. Let me tell you about Sarah, a nurse who worked in a high-pressure emergency room. Every day, she dealt with life-and-death situations, demanding doctors, worried families, and her own exhaustion. For years, she would come home emotionally drained and would snap at her husband and children over the smallest things. She felt terrible about it, but she couldn't seem to stop herself. Then Sarah learned about the power of the pause. She started practicing a simple technique. Whenever she felt anger rising, she would take 3 deep breaths and count to 10 before responding. At first, it felt awkward and forced, but gradually, this tiny space began to transform her life. In that pause, Sarah discovered something amazing. She had choices. She could choose to see the difficult doctor as someone under enormous pressure rather than as a personal attack on her competence. She could choose to respond to her children's chaos with patience rather than frustration. She could choose to communicate her needs clearly rather than exploding in anger. The pause isn't just about counting to 10. It's about creating space for wisdom to emerge. In that space, you can ask yourself powerful questions. What's really going on here? What do I want to accomplish? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values and goals? Will reacting in anger help or hurt this situation? Here's a practical technique that can change your life immediately. The stop method. When you feel anger rising, literally say the word stop in your mind. Then follow these steps. S. Step back physically and mentally from the situation. T. Take 3 deep breaths to calm your nervous system. O. Observe what you're really feeling and what's really happening. P. Proceed with intention rather than reaction. This method works because it interrupts the automatic anger response and engages your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking and emotional regulation. When you're in full anger mode, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, has hijacked your thinking, and you're literally not capable of making good decisions. The pause gives your rational brain time to come back online. But here's what's truly powerful about the pause. It's not just about preventing bad reactions. It's about creating space for extraordinary responses. When you pause, you might discover empathy for someone who's triggered your anger. You might find a creative solution to a problem that seemed impossible. You might realize that the situation isn't worth your emotional energy at all. The pause also sends a powerful message to others. When someone is trying to provoke you and you respond with calm consideration instead of reactive anger, you demonstrate true strength. You show that you're not controlled by external circumstances, but that you choose your responses based on your values and goals. Practice the pause everywhere. In traffic, in disagreements with loved ones, when receiving criticism, when things don't go according to plan. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until responding with wisdom instead of reacting with anger becomes your default mode. Chapter 3. Excavating the roots, healing the source of your anger. Most people spend their entire lives trying to manage the symptoms of anger without ever addressing the root causes. It's like taking painkillers for a broken bone without ever setting the bone. You might feel better temporarily, but the real problem remains. To truly master your anger, you must be willing to go on an archaeological dig into your own emotional history. This isn't about blame or dwelling on the past. It's about understanding and healing. Every angry reaction you have today is connected to something deeper, unhealed wounds, unmet needs, or patterns of thinking that no longer serve you. When you understand these connections, your anger loses its mysterious power over you. Let me share the story of David, a successful lawyer who seemed to have his life together. But David had a secret. He would fly into uncontrollable rages over the smallest mistakes. A misspelled word in a document, a slightly late meeting, or someone forgetting to return his call. His anger was so disproportionate to the situations that he knew something deeper was going on. Through therapy and self-reflection, David discovered that his anger stemmed from his childhood with a perfectionist father who never seemed satisfied with anything David did. No achievement was good enough, no effort was adequate. David learned to associate any mistake or imperfection with the devastating feeling of not being worthy of love. As an adult, whenever David encountered imperfection in himself or others, his unconscious mind interpreted it as a threat to his worthiness, and anger became his defense mechanism. Once he understood this connection, David could separate his past from his present and respond to current situations based on reality rather than old wounds. Here's a powerful exercise to help you excavate your own anger roots. Think about your most recent angry episode and ask yourself these questions. What was the trigger? What actually happened that made you angry? Be specific and factual, not interpretive. What was your interpretation? What meaning did you assign to what happened? What story did you tell yourself about the situation? What did it remind you of? Does this situation or feeling connect to anything from your past? What patterns do you notice? What need wasn't being met? What were you hoping for or needing that you didn't get? Was it respect, security, understanding, control, or something else? What would you tell a friend? If your best friend came to you with this exact situation, what would you tell them? Often, we're much more compassionate and rational when advising others. This process of inquiry isn't always comfortable, but it's incredibly liberating. When you understand why you react the way you do, you're no longer at the mercy of unconscious patterns. You can choose different responses based on conscious awareness rather than automatic reactions. Many people discover that their anger is rooted in one of these common sources. Childhood experiences of feeling powerless, criticized, or emotionally unsafe can create anger patterns that persist into adulthood. If you learn that the world is dangerous or that people can't be trusted, anger becomes a way of protecting yourself from further hurt. Unprocessed grief or loss can manifest as anger. When we haven't fully grieved something we've lost, whether it's a person, a dream, or a version of ourselves, that unexpressed sadness often converts to anger. Perfectionism and unrealistic expectations create a constant source of frustration and anger. If you believe that everything should go according to plan or that people should always meet your standards, you're setting yourself up for chronic anger. Fear masquerading as anger is incredibly common. When we feel afraid or vulnerable, anger can feel more powerful and protective. But addressing the underlying fear is the only way to truly resolve the anger. The beautiful thing about this inner work is that healing old wounds doesn't just reduce your anger, it transforms your entire life. You become more compassionate, more resilient, and more capable of creating the relationships and experiences you truly want. Chapter 4. Building your emotional fitness program. Just as you wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training, you can't expect to master your anger without building your emotional fitness. This requires consistent, intentional practice, not just when you're angry, but every single day. The stronger your emotional fitness, the more resilient you become to anger triggers. Think of anger control like physical fitness. If you only exercise when you're out of shape, it's going to be painful and ineffective. But if you build strength and endurance gradually through consistent practice, you can handle challenges that would have overwhelmed you before. Here's your comprehensive emotional fitness program. Morning mental preparation. Start each day by setting your emotional intention. Before you check your phone or dive into your to-do list, spend 5 minutes visualizing how you want to respond to potential challenges. See yourself staying calm in traffic, responding patiently to difficult people, and handling unexpected problems with grace. This mental rehearsal primes your brain to respond differently when these situations actually occur. Breathing mastery. Your breath is the bridge between your mind and body, and mastering it gives you instant access to calm in any situation. Practice this technique daily. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 6 counts. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system and tells your body that you're safe. Do this for 5 minutes every morning and evening, and use it in the moment whenever you feel anger rising. Stress inoculation. Deliberately expose yourself to small stressors while practicing your calm response. This could be as simple as standing in the longest line at the grocery store without getting frustrated, or listening to a political opinion you disagree with without getting defensive. Each time you successfully maintain your composure in a small challenge, you build your capacity to handle bigger ones. Emotional vocabulary development. Most people have a very limited emotional vocabulary, which makes it hard to understand and communicate their feelings accurately. Expand your emotional awareness by learning to identify and name subtle differences in your feelings. Instead of just angry, learn to recognize when you're feeling frustrated, irritated, disappointed, hurt, or overwhelmed. The more precisely you can identify your emotions, the better you can manage them. Empathy training. Anger often stems from a lack of understanding or empathy for others' perspectives. Practice putting yourself in other people's shoes every day. When someone cuts you off in traffic, imagine they might be rushing to the hospital. When a cashier is slow, consider they might be new or having a difficult day. This doesn't mean being naive or excusing bad behavior, but it helps you respond with understanding rather than anger. Physical release practices. Anger creates physical tension and energy that needs to be released in healthy ways. Find physical activities that help you discharge stress and negative emotions. Running, boxing, dancing, yoga, or even vigorous house cleaning. Regular physical exercise is one of the most effective anger management tools available. Mindfulness meditation. This isn't about emptying your mind or achieving some mystical state. It's about developing the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. Start with just 5 minutes a day of sitting quietly and noticing your breath. When thoughts or emotions arise, acknowledge them without judgment and return your attention to your breath. This practice develops the mental muscle you need to stay centered during emotional storms. Gratitude practice. Anger and gratitude cannot coexist in the same mental space. Make gratitude a daily habit by writing down 3 things you're thankful for every evening. Include both big and small things. Your health, a good meal, a kind gesture from a stranger, or simply the fact that you have another day to grow and improve. Communication skills development. Many anger episodes stem from poor communication. Practice expressing your needs and feelings clearly and respectfully. Learn to use I statements instead of you statements, to listen without trying to fix or defend, and to ask clarifying questions when you don't understand something. Remember, building emotional fitness is like building physical fitness. It takes time, consistency, and patience with yourself. You wouldn't expect to bench press 200 pounds on your first day at the gym, and you shouldn't expect to never feel anger after a week of practice. But with consistent effort, you'll notice yourself becoming stronger, more resilient, and more in control of your emotional responses. Chapter 5. The Art of Conscious Response. The ultimate goal of anger mastery isn't to never feel anger. It's to transform how you express and channel that energy. Anger, at its core, is simply energy. Like electricity, it can destroy or it can power positive change, depending on how you direct it. Masters of emotional control learn to harness anger's energy and channel it into constructive action. Consider the story of Martin Luther King Jr., who had every reason to be consumed by anger at the injustices he witnessed and experienced. Instead of letting that anger destroy him or lashing out violently, he channeled it into one of the most powerful social movements in history. His anger became fuel for change, not destruction. This is the art of conscious response, taking the energy that anger provides and directing it purposefully rather than letting it control you. Here's how to develop this skill. The transformation technique. When you feel anger rising, instead of asking, "How can I make them pay?" or "How can I win this fight?" ask, "How can I use this energy constructively?" Maybe your anger at a workplace injustice motivates you to propose better policies. Maybe your frustration with your child's behavior leads you to have a deeper conversation about what's really troubling them. Maybe your irritation with a friend habit helps you realize you need to communicate your boundaries more clearly. The values filter. Before responding to any anger-provoking situation, run your potential response through your values filter. Ask yourself, will this response align with who I want to be? Will it move me closer to or further from my goals? Will it improve or damage this relationship? Your values become your guide for how to channel anger's energy. Strategic patience. Sometimes the most powerful response to anger is strategic patience. Choosing to address an issue when you can do so most effectively rather than when you're most emotional. This isn't about suppressing your feelings or avoiding conflict. It's about timing your response for maximum positive impact. Assertive communication. Learn to express your anger through assertive rather than aggressive communication. Aggressive communication attacks the person. Assertive communication addresses the behavior or situation. Instead of, "You're so irresponsible," try, "When you don't follow through on commitments, I feel frustrated and it affects my ability to trust you. Can we talk about how to prevent this in the future?" The bigger picture perspective. When you're angry, your focus narrows to the immediate trigger. Consciously expand your perspective by asking, will this matter in 5 years? What would I advise my best friend in this situation? What can this situation teach me about myself or others? Let me share how this works in practice through the story of Maria, a single mother working 2 jobs to support her 3 children. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, she came home to find her teenage son hadn't done his chores. Her daughter was crying about a friendship problem, and her youngest was refusing to do homework. The old Maria would have exploded, screaming at all 3 children and creating an evening of tension and hurt feelings. But Maria had been practicing conscious response techniques. She felt the anger rising and recognized it as a signal that she was overwhelmed and needed support. Instead of reacting, Maria took 3 deep breaths and said, "I can see everyone's having a tough evening, and I'm feeling overwhelmed too. Let's sit down together and figure out how we can help each other." This conscious response transformed what could have been a destructive evening into an opportunity for the family to connect and support each other. The curiosity practice. When someone's behavior triggers your anger, get curious instead of furious. Ask yourself, what might be going on in their life that's causing them to act this way? What am I missing about this situation? How might they be seeing this differently than I am? Curiosity dissolves anger because it shifts you from judgment to understanding. Energy redirection. Anger provides tremendous energy. Use it. Channel that energy into problem solving, creative projects, physical exercise, or advocacy for causes you care about. Some of the world's greatest innovations and social changes have come from people who channeled their anger about how things were into energy for creating how things could be. The art of conscious response requires practice, but it's incredibly empowering. Instead of being a victim of your emotions, you become their master. Instead of anger controlling your life, you harness its power to create positive change. Chapter 6. Creating your peaceful empire. The final stage of anger mastery is creating a life that naturally supports emotional balance and peace. This isn't about avoiding all stressful situations. That's impossible and wouldn't help you grow. It's about designing your environment, relationships, and daily practices to minimize unnecessary anger triggers while maximizing your resilience and joy. Think of this as creating your own peaceful empire, a life structure that supports your highest self and makes it easier to maintain emotional balance even during challenging times. Environmental design. Your physical environment significantly impacts your emotional state. Create spaces that promote calm and reflection. Declutter your living areas, add plants or natural elements. Ensure good lighting and minimize noise pollution. Have a designated space where you can go to center yourself when you feel overwhelmed. Relationship curation. Not all relationships deserve the same level of energy and engagement. Identify the people in your life who consistently drain your energy or trigger your anger without adding value. This doesn't mean cutting everyone off, but it does mean setting appropriate boundaries and limiting your exposure to toxic dynamics. Simultaneously, invest more time and energy in relationships with people who support your growth, share your values, and bring out your best self. Surround yourself with people who model the emotional regulation you want to develop. Energy management. Recognize that your emotional capacity is finite and manage it like any other resource. Identify what energizes you versus what drains you, and structure your days accordingly. Schedule demanding tasks for when your energy is highest. Build in recovery time after stressful periods, and protect your energy from unnecessary depletion. Purpose alignment. When your daily actions align with your deeper purpose and values, you experience less friction and frustration. Anger often arises when there's a disconnect between what you're doing and what you truly value. Regularly assess whether your work, relationships, and activities are moving you toward or away from your authentic self. The daily practice integration. Make emotional regulation practices a non-negotiable part of your daily routine, just like brushing your teeth or eating meals. This might include morning meditation, evening reflection, regular exercise, or weekly time in nature. These practices aren't luxuries. They're essential maintenance for your emotional well-being. Continuous learning. Commit to ongoing growth in emotional intelligence. Read books, attend workshops, work with a therapist or coach, or join support groups. The more you understand about human psychology and emotional patterns, the better equipped you'll be to navigate challenging situations. Legacy living. Make your decisions based on the legacy you want to leave. Ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered by my children, colleagues, and community? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world? When you live from this perspective, petty anger triggers lose their power because you can see they don't align with your larger vision. The ripple effect. Remember that your emotional state affects everyone around you. When you master your anger, you don't just improve your own life. You create a positive ripple effect that touches your family, friends, colleagues, and community. You become a model of what's possible, inspiring others to develop their own emotional mastery. Your peaceful empire isn't built overnight. It's constructed day by day, choice by choice, response by response. Every time you choose patience over anger, understanding over judgment, or compassion over criticism, you're adding another stone to the foundation of a life characterized by peace and purpose. Your transformation begins now. You've now been equipped with a comprehensive system for mastering your anger and transforming your emotional life. But knowledge without action is powerless. Your transformation begins the moment you decide to implement these principles in your daily life. Start today with just one small change. Maybe it's taking 3 deep breaths before responding to your next frustration. Maybe it's asking yourself, what am I really feeling the next time anger arises? Maybe it's setting aside 5 minutes for morning reflection. Small, consistent actions create massive long-term changes. Remember that mastering your anger isn't about becoming emotionless or passive. It's about becoming powerful. True power isn't the ability to control others through force or manipulation. It's the ability to control yourself regardless of external circumstances. When you can remain centered in the storm, respond with wisdom in chaos, and choose love over fear, you become unstoppable. Your anger has been your teacher, showing you where you need to grow and heal. Now, let your peace be your gift to the world. Let your calm presence be a source of stability for others. Let your conscious responses inspire those around you to develop their own emotional mastery. The world needs more people who choose understanding over anger, compassion over criticism, and peace over conflict. By mastering your anger, you're not just changing your own life, you're contributing to the healing of our world. This is your time. This is your opportunity. This is your moment to step into the person you were always meant to be. Someone who lives with intention, responds with wisdom, and creates positive change wherever you go. Welcome to Epic English Stories, where every story has the power to transform a life. Your story of anger mastery and emotional freedom starts now. Make it epic.